Good morning, everyone. My name is Gisela, and it's morning here in near Chicago, and I'm sure it's super early from with with where Myra lives, where who is our guest today, Myra Stewart, and she is a homeschooling mom from Sacramento, California. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area.
Yeah. So good morning, Myra. Welcome to Latinos Homeschooling Podcast, the show where us Latinos can talk about homeschooling, share resources, our story, and why we decided to homeschool. So Myra, welcome. Before we continue, I just want to find out how you're doing. How's your family doing? How's everything going?
Life is tremendous, so I am doing great, and I'm always grateful to be alive. Yeah, my family's also doing very wonderful. I'm really grateful for them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you guys are doing well. So Myra, I am not sure how we found each other, but I did one of the ways that I think it was because of your book,
Mhm.
which Grow Florecita Grow, which you also had the opportunity to read it to me. But can you tell me a little bit about yourself, about your family?
Yeah, so I grew up in Fairfield, California, and Vacaville, California area. My family, I was born. Um, my mom, my mom had just come from Mexico when she got pregnant with me. My dad was, grew up in Oakland and was born and raised in Oakland, and so I really grew up in a juxtaposition of a home where I have like a, second generation father in the United States of America because my grandmother, his mom came here at 12. And so he, was more so acclimated to the American life than my mom. And then my mom came from a small little ranch in Michoacan in Mexico. And it's so it was a huge juxtaposition as far as how I was raised and what my expectations were. And I grew up in around my grandfather's farm a lot, which is 15 minutes from my home. And I am very, very fortunate that I had that land because it ultimately connected me to the earth and connected me to my imagination and just really, really impacted how I feel and am and who I am and how I walk on the planet.
So was it your grandfather from your dad's side that had the farm?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
so they're farmers from generations probably, right?
Well, my grandfather, yes, from generations
Yeah.
when I actually my mom's mom came the other day to visit my mom and from Mexico, and she was telling me stories of my great grandfather on my dad's side because they lived in the same village. So
Yeah.
my matriarchal grandmother was telling me about my great grandparents,
Mhm.
and she was telling me that how every time she would pass by their home, they would always have an abundance of food and abundance of fruit and abundance of animals, and how they were always giving to people. And so they weren't farmers in the sense of like they were farmers, in that way of like this is it was their business, but it wasn't like a major big business.
Yeah.
It was really they had a bunch of food that they grew and that they had on their land. And so my grandfather's the same way, where he doesn't farming is not a way for him to make money. It's really a way for him to have food and to grow food and to connect to the earth, and he really shares it with within the family. So there's an abundance of it all the time. It's so in that way, yeah.
So what's one of the main things that he grows here grows in California?
Corn, oranges, tomatillos, tomatoes, squashes, a bunch of different types of squashes, peppers, the things you use and will use every day. It's very practical.
Hmm.
So when after every year when the maize comes out, we go and we make chepos, like so corn tamales, and
Yeah.
we'll
It's
in the
very
molino.
Michoacan. Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like very practical types of foods that we use in our everyday life, and it tastes so much better because it's grown there.
Yeah. And the corn is very fresh. So did you grow your food as well? Do you grow some food in your garden?
So right now, no. And a lot of the, I'm at very close. I'm very fortunate and privileged. I'm very close to his farm. So
Yeah,
I have to admit, I
lucky.
take advantage.
You're
So I
lucky.
go there a lot, and when as my I'm there right now. I have grown in the past, but right now we recently moved, so life is kind of shifting
Yeah.
for me in many ways. And I just had a baby 5 months ago, so not to use as an excuse, but I'm just not in a place to garden right now. But I do still connect to the earth through the land in that way, in this moment. But I do foresee that that's has to be in my life. It's a way that I connect to my food, and so yeah.
And my mom was such a good gardener, and I try every year and I don't have much luck. And I don't want to make any excuses because I live in near Chicago, because in the back of the seed packets it says start sowing 6 or 7 weeks before you take it out. It's just, there's no excuse for me not to do it, because my neighbors and friends of mine grow in abundance of fruit and vegetables here.
Uh-huh.
So
Mhm.
that's something I really need to work on for me as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you're really lucky. That's awesome. What part of Michoacan is your mom from?
It's so small. It's called El Chacolote.
Do you know where that's near?
The biggest city it's near is probably Sahuayo,
Oh,
Morelia. Um, yeah, those, yes, Sahuayo or Morelia or things like that.
yeah, because we're from, actually, the town where my family's from, it's called Tingambato. It's actually bigger than what it used to be. There's a lot of aguacates there, and
Mm,
that's what's grown. And you mentioned uchepos, and that's something that we eat and that they sell in
mhm,
the plaza. And the corn is very fresh, and it tastes so different down there.
mhm.
Yeah, so that's great. So your mom was from Michoacan, and then she met your dad when you guys moved to California. So can you just tell me about how about your education and how you grew up?
Just to bring it back real quick. So my dad actually met her in Mexico.
Oh, you
So
did. Oh,
my great grandparents and my mom lived in the same ranch, the same village.
oh,
And
okay.
so my dad would go there every summer for 3 months. And my mom would work at one of the chapel there. And so they would see that's how they met in
Oh,
Mexico. So then she ended up they got married, and she ended up coming to the United States
oh,
through
wow.
him.
Yeah.
But thank you. I wanted to clarify.
No, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and then you asked me, I want to go back to the question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, about how, can you just tell me about your education, about how your education was?
hmm I mean, I went to public school, kindergarten to 12th grade, and then I went to community college, and then I went to San Jose State University. And that's my education really to me is beyond that. It's life, it's through life. I
Mhm.
think that's really what I want to capture with my books and what I put out in my life is that life and earth is a schoolroom, and we learn through life, and it's a teacher, which is why I ultimately chose to homeschool my child, you
Mhm.
know? So I just wanted to highlight that because my education really, when I really open it, when I come out of my life and traditional education, I look and I'm able to really see where I got my core values and why I am who I am, my persistence, my consistency. Um, and the fabric of who I am is life itself as a teacher.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So did you know before your son was born, that you wanted a homeschool? Is that something that you thought about after after he was born?
I love that question. So one time I was actually before my son was born, and I was actually in college. I was with my grandpa, and he was picking fruit, and he was just outside, right? And I was just really marveling at all that he knows as far as agriculture and building, and just he's an electrician, and Everything he does it's so dynamic and it's so amazing, all the wisdom he carries about plants and animals and life itself, and um down to the details. Just he's so knowledgeable. And I asked him, how do you know all these things? Like, how did you learn all these things? Because he went up to fourth grade, right? And he's math, oh my gosh, just math and geometry. He's really he's brilliant. And I asked him the question, like, how did you come to know these things? And with the fourth grade education, and he said, caminando y practicando. And I hit me, I was like, whoa. I, so to him, when I asked him more questions about that statement, and that it came down to walking with people, walking with the land, walking in life, and learning through others, learning through experiences, circumstances, and events.
Mhm.
And I thought that was magnificent. I thought that was brilliant. I was like, oh my gosh, and learning through apprenticeship, and just the way he was, like the way he approached and understood education was so different than anything that I was, the way I learned in traditional public schools, right? And long story short, when I had my child, it was so clear. It made sense that I wanted my kid to learn through the art of practicando and caminando, caminando y practicando.
And your grandpa is such a knowledgeable person that, and with a fourth grade education, well, formal education, because he did have a lot of
He
education.
did. Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
yeah,
Mhm.
it is. And so did he ever tell you, like encourage you to go to college and to learn from other people? I mean, just to pursue higher degrees or anything like that?
No,
No,
it's so
okay.
fascinating. I think in my family, it's really, I never, even from my parents, it was never something that was hammered into me, or they never told me you need to go to college one day. It was never enforced. It was really almost like, you there's a song inside of you and it will call you. Really. That's kind of how I was raised.
And
And I
that's
wanted to go to college because I wanted to do that. I wanted to live the American dream, and I wanted to figure out what that was for myself. But um yeah.
that's beautiful. And the reason I ask you that question is because, my upbringing was, I grew up here. My parents immigrated from Mexico, and, you know, a lot of my community, my dad and a lot of his friends, a lot of my parents' friends, they worked in the steel industry here.
Uh-huh.
And they were all immigrants as well. And, they had a pretty, they had, they all had stable jobs with union benefits and everything. And my dad had a first grade formal education, went up to first grade because he was always, his parents always wanted him to, they had to work to survive. Everybody worked. When they were little, they had to work. And the my mom had a great uncle that came here when he was really little. So he was like a grandfather. We call him Theo, but he was always around our family. And he didn't even graduate high school, because he had to work too. So, also very, my Theo was very, also, I viewed him as a very smart man. He worked in insurance, and he did really well. And he would tell me when I would be in college, I had all these books, and he would say, "Wow, Mija, you're gonna be so smart." But then now that I think about how my education was, and I'm grateful for it, but I think the people I should have learned from more were like my dad, more like sit down and teach me something, and my uncle, but they basically would tell me, learn from your teachers. They know, you
Mm.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
If things would have shifted more, because you're back then, my parents were just, my dad was so busy working, and he just basically said, go to college, and it's interesting. I'm glad that I just love the philosophy, I want to call it, that your family had, that
Mhm.
you'll find it, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I'd like to ask questions about our education just to find out if that had any, that if that might have affected your reason to homeschool, if
Mm.
how if you didn't have, if there weren't like a lot of teachers that were Latinos that you had growing up. So growing up, did you have a lot of or some Latino teachers?
Oh my goodness. For me, I think no, not really. Um, I've I have to say I've been influenced, and the most profound teachers I've had were African American.
Mm.
And so that's really, unfortunately, no. Maybe I did have one, well, I did have one teacher, Miss Castro, and that's actually really profound now that I'm tapping into this. She introduced me, she was an English teacher in 6th grade, and I will never forget when she introduced us to poetry, and she read Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. And that, I remember I took that printout, I went home, I read it and reread it and reread it, and I put it on my wall and I just reread it, and it was so profound. And I really think that it activated something inside of me that knew um just how important emotional intelligence and emotional resilience is in my life and life in general, and poetry, and my ability to write poetry was activated even more. But other than that, really, um, no.
Wow, and and I think it's still the case where a lot of there's not a lot of representation in education, and even now, wow, yeah, I grew up with several, and I'm in the Midwest, and yet most of them, yeah, weren't Latino. There were probably 5 or 6 throughout my whole K through
Mhm,
12 education, and a lot of the ones that were Latinos taught us Spanish or bilingual ed growing up. But there
mm,
was one science teacher that I had that was Latino, which I'm
mhm.
grateful for. But yeah,
Oh,
and you did pursue a degree, right? You did
yes.
go on, yeah. So what did you what was your major?
So I have a BA in sociology and with the concentration in community and social change. Mhm.
Oh, and what made you decide to major in that?
That's funny. I had a professor at Solano Community College and in Fairfield and Vallejo, California. But I went to his classes in Fairfield, California. So I took a sociology class just as one of the prerequisites. And oh my gosh, I felt like it blew me away. It helped me understand life and things that I questioned. And um, it was that energy that I felt like I needed and I wanted to involve myself into, and it led me on a journey of really discovery and understanding history and understanding like sociology, understanding society, and understanding my how I fit and my people's fit in society, and it's been an amazing experience, and I'm so grateful for that education.
So that impacted you to
Absolutely. Hmm.
pursue that
Hmm.
degree. Okay. Uh, so um so can you tell now, I mean, can you tell me, I know you decided to homeschool, but what are what are some of the things you as a homeschooler you enjoy the most doing? What's been most rewarding for you?
The most rewarding for me is being able to be be wild with my kid, like really really tune into my moment, day by day circumstances of our lives, and tune into what we need on a soul level, and tune into what I mean by that is, um what is it that we need to learn? What is life presenting to us? And what is it that what can we learn? And how can I use what we're learning to further support what we're going through as a family? And whether that mean, that can mean any, and I can give you an example. We recently moved, and I noticed we needed more of a connection. So learning through board games and learning through physical touch and learning through play more, learning outside, being outside. So just really, really tuning in to what we're going through in our lives, and using that to inspire how we need to connect what we learn, continue to teach math and English and reading, and because I think those are life skills, and also, but really in a way that is going to connect us, right? Connection is so important to me, connecting to my kid.
Yeah. So what do you have like a specific style of homeschooling? Because there's so many styles right now that, I
Right.
know that unschooling is
Hmm.
being embraced more by a lot of parents, and I can see why. But do you have do you have a certain style?
I think it's there's something with me that dislikes labeling myself.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
It's fluid. It's so fluid. I wish I could say I think I really, really I'm the kind of person that I will take what I like of many, many things, and
Mhm.
I will bring it together, and it is what it is. And I don't know if that's a flaw. Maybe that's a
No, no,
flaw.
no.
Ugh,
There's
but
no
that's,
flaws. There's no
you
flaws.
know.
Yeah. It, it I'm the same way. I
Uh-huh.
take my daughter, I have a 13-year-old, and there's subjects that she wants to learn and books that she just wants to learn on her own.
Uh-huh.
And like she's really studying German a lot right now, and she loves to draw, and I tell her, well, we need to work on your algebra. But she's like, Mom, give me an hour more. I'm working on my German lesson. And I didn't teach her German. She's learning it, and yeah, I'm the same way. Like how would I describe it? Like, is it working? So don't feel bad. I have met moms that really embrace the unschooling method, and when they mean embrace, it means their child goes to bed at whenever they decide, and there's no curriculums, no books, yet it works for them. They have a book on
Mhm.
how to do it, and they're still pretty really involved with their child's education, of course,
Mhm.
but it's just
Mhm.
a different way of them learning. So yeah, there's a lot of parents. We're in the same boat basically, Myra. I think like I don't have a label either on how I homeschool, what style I decide to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, but can you tell me what a typical week looks like for you? And is it,
Mhm.
because you have a baby and you have a son.
Mhm.
So what does a typical week look like for you?
So it definitely has shifted, and I've had to relearn, unlearn, and relearn a
Mhm.
lot with, because I had my first son is 5. He'll be 6 in August, and so a 5 years gap for me is 5 years is plenty of time to get into routines, and a new baby coming in, and I'm like, oh goodness, just it's shifted us, it's slowed us down tremendously, which I think it's ultimately what we've needed as well. So what it looks like now is very different than what it looked like before. Just want to
Mhm.
give you context.
Yeah.
But what it looks like now is we'll wake up, we will have breakfast, and we will, after breakfast, we'll connect, whether it be through an activity or through a conversation or through just drinking literally water or tea or just sitting with each other. We sit and have breakfast together. And then I will feed the baby. And after we feed the baby, I feed the baby. I'm the one that feeds the baby. I will sit down with him and we will read, and we'll engage into something more like logical and perhaps heady, where we'll do math lesson or English lesson, and then we go back out and we play, And we, whether that means go out to a park or go outside in the backyard, or whether that be, sometimes it means literally staying home and playing and just engaging in activity. It's just so different, right? And then we come back and we have lunch, and it's just, this is very practical, like most of it's like not exciting at all. And we connect again. I think I feel like I'm always talking, it's like we're always communicating. um and it's really up to, like I said, whether it mean we connect through a game, whether it mean we connect through play, whether it mean me letting him do something on his own, whether it means sometimes sitting down and cuddling and watching a show, really, because sometimes I need that too. And sometimes it means going out and meeting a friend. And then other days it's, let's get up and let's go out and just spend the day out in the world and hike, or be outside and play, or, and it's so different too, but for the most part, we're in the day-to-day life, which is not fun and exciting, and there's no bells and whistles. It's just consistency and connection. That's really what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I've been sometimes I have to I have a moment sometimes when it's happened like a couple years ago where, it's a Tuesday and it's during the day and I'm at a museum. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, like a lot of people my age are working in an office right now, but yet I'm
Hmm.
doing this fun thing. And it's just like that becomes part of our lives, going out and explore because that's how they learn.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yet it's really cool that we're doing it, right? And that it's during the weekend we're doing these types of activities with them.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it's
I love that. And I love taking them to, because I'm still so close to my grandparents. I take them to the farm all the time, because my grandparents live on the land, my sister lives on the land on it. There's one, two, three properties on one of the farms, and then next there's another property that my other aunt lives on. And so my aunts and my cousins are all there, and might have another aunt that lives like basically walking distance from there. So I'm the oldest of my cousins, and my cousins are like Mateo's age and like
oh really?
10 and 12. So they're like we're a younger generation. And
Yeah.
so my son is growing up with my cousins.
Wow.
And three of my little younger cousins are being homeschooled as well. So one of them is
Really?
9, one of them is, I believe, 10, another one's 13. Yeah, so we get them together and let them, so I'll let them play, and then we sit and we do the traditional, like, okay, this is a math lesson, this is a reading lesson. And then, and then we also let them be free together.
So that's really cool. So he gets together with your cousins and they're all homeschoolers as well. And
Yeah.
that's really cool. And that's actually not really as common in the Latino community. And that's great because sometimes where it's the numbers of Latinos homeschooling is growing, but
It is.
a few years ago, with other Latinos, when I tell my homeschool, they're like, what? It's something rare. But now people are asking me questions, how do I homeschool? Because they want something different for their child. So, so
Mhm.
it's a growing it's growing within our community, which is great because that means
Mhm.
that, we want something, a better experience for our children. I mean,
Yes.
I love that story you probably are, you're probably more in the metropolitan area and then the rural land is not far from
Yes.
where you live.
Mm-mm. Yep. That's how it is. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I really feel that there's this soul for, like, when I talk to my tias about it, it's like this like soul knowing, like, why are my kids gonna be away from me all day? And like there's this like need for like just connecting to our children, and being the teachers, and a knowingness that there's something special there when we connect, and we are together, and we are able to connect with my, my son is able to connect with my other tias, and my tias has given him lessons, or, connected and taught him things. And that's so special. Like,
It is.
what?
It is. Yeah.
Like my son is learning from my tias, and my cousins are learning from me as their older cousin, and we're learning from each other. I'm learning from the kids. It's like, that's life, and that's education right there. Oh my goodness, on a soul level.
Yes, and family. And I mean, your story is so unique, your homeschooling story, because that is a rarity with any family. And that's beautiful.
Mhm.
That's another book that I think that's so beautiful, like another
Thank
kind of
you.
homeschooling book story. That is awesome, Myra.
Thank you.
Oh, so what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about homeschoolers?
Socialization, that
Yeah.
I'm raising some weirdo.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, another one that oh my gosh, I can go in on this, that my kid won't have the life skills to connect and commune with other people, and somehow won't be able to navigate with real life work, that the real life demands of life. That somehow, I've heard, school teaches them how to interact with a bunch of different a bunch of different perspectives and information and people, and they have to learn how to navigate different information. And I think that's fascinating. Like, what makes people think that there's not a dynamic, a dynamicness, or I don't even know the word I'm trying to use, but in how we think within like the family unit itself. I am
Mhm.
very different than my son. I mean, and my son, and my husband and I are similar, but there is that the dynamicness that we need to be able to understand and to relate to people, and to cooperate, and to have compassion, and to have empathy and sympathy, and all the dynamicness that we need to embody in school. We need to learn that within the home too. And I think that's a misconception, that we only get that in a school setting and not in our home.
Mhm.
That exists when our home. We have to learn how to communicate with one another. We have to learn that, you want that, but that's not what is practical for all of us right now. Like, there's things that we have to learn in our everyday life that will overflow into life, into working with leaders and other bosses and people. And if what, and another thing is, like, what if my kid doesn't want to work under necessarily another boss in that traditional sense? Like, what, there's so much I can go into this, but family unit itself, the family unit has so much to teach about everyday life. If we cannot sit with our family, what makes us think we can sit and really relate to other, like, I mean, I'm just saying, for me, I'm not talking about other families. My goal in my family is, I want to be able to sit with my family in all that they are, and learn from them, and that will ultimately allow me to relate to other people too, you know
Mhm.
anyway, that's kind of another, but there's so much to learn. My point is, there's so much to learn from the family unit, and from interacting with the uncles and aunts and grandparents and friends, friends from co-op, or friends from other school. There's so many ways to make relationships and to learn how to be human, that is not just solely in one classroom setting. That's my point.
Yeah, and in a classroom setting, they tell you don't talk, sit down, don't do
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
It's yeah, how I mean, when you started, when everybody had, when we were working outside of the home, our coworkers weren't our age only. You work with
Right.
people much older than you, a lot younger than you,
Yes.
and then whoever, if you work directly with, I worked in fast food when I was in high school. My customers were different ages.
Mhm.
You know, I think one of the best experiences that I got, I went to college, but I went because I felt like that's something that I had to do, and if I didn't do it, I was gonna be eating out of the dumpsters and
Mm.
classified non-successful, and I wanted to be classified, I guess, quote
Mhm.
unquote, successful. And I worked almost almost full time while I was going to school because I like to work, and my humbling moments, I guess, were when I worked in an office. Like there were certain office etiquette that I didn't know that, that I was 20 and a person that was 40 is like, hey, you better clean up after yourself. Will you make yourself coffee? Or,
Mhm, mhm,
just things like that. Of course I did that at my home, but I just, they're just lessons that you learn when you're actually working that are probably, I would say, more impactful than the classroom setting, although it's just my way of thinking. And I want to teach my kids that if they don't decide to go to college, that there are other options, but I want them to be prepared for life. And that's what me and you are teaching them now. So, you know,
mhm.
so yeah, it's very beautiful, what you're saying. But what are some of the things that excite you right now, about your child? I mean, of course, I can see a lot of things about homeschooling excite you, but what's one of the things that you're like, whoa, this is so cool that we're doing this? Like, if you can name one thing,
Mm. I
homeschooling.
think one thing that is so cool that I'm learning about my son is ever since he was a little baby, like not a baby, like one or little, he was always drawn to Asian culture and martial arts, and he he's very physically intelligent with his body. He understands his body as a physical intelligence. That's amazing to me. And he he started with doing kung fu about a year ago, and now he started doing karate. And I am really so, oh my gosh, I love seeing how much he loves moving his body in that physical way, and how I'm really learning how he loves a good challenge. And I'm like, wow, because sometimes I'd be like, I would be in the everyday life, and he would challenge things, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I just need you to please like cooperate with
That
me right now.
little.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and he loves a good challenge, and he loves like meeting goals, and physically moving his body in a way where he's challenging himself. And I think that's so brilliant. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't think I taught him that, I don't know. I mean, we've always been really active in our life, but just the way he's able to focus in class, and he wants to be the best. And he's scoping out people, and he's like, I want to be better than him. And I'm like, whoa, what? Like, I don't think I seriously don't. If anything, I don't think, yeah, no, I feel like there's an innateness within him of that. And I'm just really really bringing that back into into my homeschool, because I'm very much so the kind of person that needs leisure and freedom, and in general. And I'm learning like he likes the structure, and he likes that consistency, and he likes to know, he likes that challenge, like, oh, meet this goal, and he's like, okay, on it, got it. And he's like
Wow.
ready for that. So, and for me, I'm like, whoa, all right, well, that's new. Okay, so that means I have to be more structured, and that he basically he's encouraging me to come out of my comfort zone in that sense.
So
So
it
I'm like, whoa.
that's so cool that that just comes out of him. I gotta be better than him and how he analyzes things, and that is
I it's a little not scary, but I'm like, whoa, okay, all right. But he is very he and another thing it does manifest too, that I'm really like, he's very hard on himself. And it's like in school, like when I'm teaching him something, it's like he wants to know it. And I'm really like, yo, it's okay. Like, if anything, I'm very different. I'm like, it's okay. Like, chill. Like, you don't have to know this like that, And so I like, whew.
like an
So,
example of what? Like, what is he like? What do you like?
so in a very simple, basic example,
Yeah.
when he's writing and he makes an S backward, and I correct him, hey, it's backwards or something, or just letting him, like, even though sometimes I
Yeah.
let him go and I let it be, but other times I'm like, hey, this is how, hey, let me just remind you. And oh gosh, and like, I'm like, it's okay.
Oh,
It's pretty, it's like, I promise you,
yeah.
it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's okay. And it's like, whoa. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Just learning just his personality um, and really bringing him back, you know?
Do you think that maybe that might be a boy thing?
I don't know. I mean, he's
No,
my
wait,
first and only son. I mean, my like first son. I have a boy that's 5 months. So I don't know. I can't tell you.
yeah, yeah, that's because, well, my son isn't my son's more like, I'll tell him, "You wrote the 4 backwards or the 2." Those are the numbers he struggles with.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Ah!" He puts his head, I mean, he doesn't get mad, but he's like, "Oh," like, he gets stuff, but it's in a way, he's laughing about it, yet he's like, "Darn, I made a mistake," but yet he's kind of laughing about it, "Let me change it," and
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's you're it seems like it's almost the same reaction, but your son's like, "I gotta do
He
it
wants
better."
to, yeah, he wants to be right or he wants to be better. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you'll get there, you'll get there.
Yeah, that is so cool. Looking forward to see how much more he's growing into that, whatever the person
I
he's
hear you.
becoming, the personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh
is
man.
that is really, really cool.
Mm.
So, what, can you tell me any subjects that you would like to teach your children now? You have a 5-month-old that you wish you would have learned while you were going to school.
Oh my gosh, everything. Oh my goodness, that's um if I have to bring it down to one example, it really comes down to what I'm really like my focus is in teaching through Grow Florecita Grow,
Mhm,
which is how important that emotional, the ability to tap into and feel,
mhm,
and how important perseverance is, and how important moving how important it is to know that life comes with challenges.
mhm,
Yet, what matters the most is that you keep going, no matter how slow, no matter how soft, no matter if you have to take 2 steps back or 1 step back. But life is about just showing up. And that's where for me and my son, it's so fascinating that I've been gifted a son that's like, oh, and I'm like, it's okay, like this is literally like what I want to teach to the world. And I'm literally given a teacher to teach this to, and to really learn with. Um, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to not be right. It's okay to slow down and showing up. That's it. Show up, you
yeah,
know?
beautiful.
It's beyond like the traditional sense of education, but
Yeah, yeah,
oh, it's so important, especially nowadays, you know?
it is, yeah, because, yeah, I think that's something that we need to really address a lot more in
Mm,
education.
yeah,
Now going to, your and now, I know you're an author. That's how I found you. It's a beautiful book.
thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about your book? Tell us a little bit about Grow Florecita Grow
Mhm.
and the movement behind that.
So, Grow Florecita Grow is a children's book that about a flower who has to grow despite the adversity and ends up blooming from that, right? And the blueprint of this book for me is that when we are in the process of life, challenge is inevitable. It is to be expected. It is a part of the blueprint of getting ultimately getting to where we want to be. And my goal with Florecita is, what if children knew when they're going into the world or experiencing life, and even adults knew that the challenge is a part of the story.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with what's going on, but it's an opportunity to get more clear on the ultimate goal. And that actually the most amazing, world renowned leaders and people and innovators on this planet experienced the most adversity and failed the most. The difference is they kept going. And that's what it is.
What inspired you to do this? What is there something that made you want to do this?
My story, my life, my childhood, my teenage years, especially. I had to pull that out from within myself, I think, in order for me to keep going in life. So I learned it through life.
Mhm.
Yeah, and my experiences.
Yeah, and I think that, with you're right about, about the great leaders in our lives. Everybody just sees how success is, and
Mhm,
they want things done yesterday, including
mhm.
the process to get successful. And everybody wants to be an overnight sensation now. It's,
Yeah.
and it seems like, so if it doesn't happen, they give up. And you know, yeah, and I think this is very beautiful right now, especially that
Mhm.
your book to tell people, like, keep moving, you're growing into whatever, you know, until this flower that blooms with,
Mhm.
you know, the person you're meant to be. That's beautiful. How long ago did you write the book? Um,
I wrote, it was a poem. I wrote the poem for myself. Like my son was just born in 2016. He was born, and I literally experienced an identity crisis. Literally, it felt like, oh my gosh, what is like my whole life shifted. And that was hard for me, going from wanting to being very career focused and wanting and having that this ambitiousness inside of me to giving birth and not and just and wanting to slow down in a way that I had never wanted to slow down before. And that caused turmoil in me. And from that is where I wrote the poem Grow, Florecita Grow. And from that, it came to ultimately there was a desire from my childhood of wanting to write a children's book, and ultimately connecting to the illustrator, which she also wanted to illustrate a children's book, and I read the poem to her, and it evolved from there. But your question was, when did it so it began
no,
in
no, you're
2016.
answering the question right. You're
Okay.
fine. You're fine. I like
Yeah,
you.
thank you. So it started in 2016, and it came out, the book was printed in 2019, 2020. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very beautiful. And do you find yourself branching out from Grow Florecita to other? I think you said you want to do another one, right?
Yeah, I think, well, I have, oh my goodness, I have other
Yeah.
children's books and books written. I Right now I recognize that there is life is a process, and so for me, I don't feel comfortable moving on to something else until I really ground Florecita in. Like,
Yeah.
she needs to be planted in a way where she's grounded, and people know about her, and know, and I say her because I really feel that Florecita is a being of herself,
Yeah.
and she's a teacher. She's my teacher, and um, it's time for her to spread into the world and to be a part of the consciousness of people. And I feel like a conduit for the Florecita consciousness to flow through me. And I don't feel that that's really completely done yet, for before I can really move on into something completely different.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So your book, can you tell us where people can where we can find this book and where we can buy it? Is it,
Yeah.
yeah.
growflorecita.com is
Okay.
where we sell the book right now. And it can be found in shops in many different places, but in a general sense, online, it's
Online.
growflorecita.com.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, thank you so much for taking the time, Myra, to talk to us. And I know we're in different time zones, so I really appreciate this time that you opened up basically to me and talked about homeschooling. And I think it's important for our stories to be shared, especially us as Latinos, because there's not a lot of representation with in the homeschool community with us. And I know that that's actually changing as well, because some of us parents want to teach our kids about our culture, about different languages. And Spanish is very important as well. But so I mean, it's just important for these stories to be shared, so other Latinos can hear it, and those who might not be homeschooling right now can actually take the leap to do it, and
Mhm.
get that little push to do it. Those that are, that just to find out what other people are doing in terms of homeschooling. I love your story, but just to close things up, what advice do you give to a parent that feels that they aren't doing enough for their child, in terms of their education,
Hmm.
that a homeschooling parent?
Oh man. Okay. I'm going to take it there. There is a non-physical, and this is specific, there's a non-physical inheritance that has been passed down to you by your ancestors. And that comes with a specific rhythm, that comes with a specific sound, a specific pattern, a specific frequency that is for you and your family. Your children have been gifted to you, and the blueprint of your family is yours to navigate and understand. It's for you to figure it out. And there is no one way of doing anything, because there's no one with the specific you. Like there's no one that is you. There's no one that's your kid. There's no one that's your partner. There's no one that is your family. And within that, there's a beat, there's a rhythm, there's a frequency to your family. Follow that, be that. And it's not going to look like my family and your family or anybody else's family. And that there's a need to take off this backpack, this baggage we carry of expectations, to
Mhm.
put it down and to recognize what it is that, what is that inheritance? What is that blueprint? And be that and embody that, because there's no one else like you and your family. And that is what it is. And some days look different than others. And that's it. Period. That's okay. That's okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I think I need to hear that sometimes. Thank you. So thank you, Myra, for spending time with me, and for your sharing your story again. And again, her book can be purchased at growflorecita.com.
Mhm.
And I am also going to post the link when
Thank
I
you.
post this podcast. And yeah, so thank you so much, Myra. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I know this is not the last time we're gonna talk. I
I hope not. You're great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, same here. I see us talking a lot more in these coming days and months. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.